Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to break a bad habit, no matter how much you want to change? In his fascinating book, The Craving Mind, psychiatrist and addiction expert Judson Brewer reveals that the problem isn't lack of willpower. It's that most of us simply don't understand how habits really work. Drawing on his clinical work and the latest neuroscience research, Brewer shows that all habits, whether good or bad, are based on the same basic learning process that has helped humans and animals survive for millions of years. When something happens, that's the trigger. Then you do something in response. That's the behavior. After that, you experience a result, either a reward or a punishment. It's like seeing some delicious food, you eat it, and then you feel good, so you want to repeat that whole process. Simple enough, yeah? Just that basic cycle of trigger, behavior, consequence playing out over and over again. But here's the crucial insight. The more we repeat a behavior, the more automatic it becomes, until we're doing it almost unconsciously, like a habit. That's because with each repetition, the neural connections in our brain linking the trigger and the behavior get stronger and more efficient. Eventually, just the trigger itself, like seeing a cigarette, feeling bored, is enough to make us crave the behavior, because our brain has learned to associate it with a reward. So if you've ever tried to quit smoking, go on a diet, or resist those Facebook notifications and found yourself falling off the wagon again and again, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're fighting against one of the most powerful learning processes evolution has come up with. Trying to control a habit with sheer willpower is like trying to stop a runaway train with your bare hands. Fortunately, there is a better way. Don't fight the wave, surf it. As Dr. Brewer discovered through his clinical work and research, the key to breaking a bad habit is not to wrestle with it, but to observe it mindfully. When you feel the urge to smoke, eat a cookie, or check Instagram for the 20th time, simply pause and notice what that craving actually feels like in your body. Where do you feel it? How intense is the sensation? How long does it last? The key is to ride it out like a wave, without trying to suppress the feeling or act on it immediately. Brewer calls this surfing the urge. It sounds almost too simple to work, but his studies have shown that regular urge surfing practice can dramatically reduce cravings and help people quit smoking. In one study, he recruited a group of hardcore smokers and split them into two groups. One received a standard smoking cessation treatment, which focuses on distracting yourself from cravings. The other was trained in mindfulness and urged surfing, simply observing their cravings with curiosity as they arose. The results were stunning. While only 6% of the standard treatment group managed to quit, a whopping 36% of the urge surfing group were able to quit successfully. And 5 months later, they were still smoke-free. So what exactly is happening in our brains when we surf an urge instead of giving into it? Brewer's research has found that mindfully observing a craving, instead of acting on it or trying to suppress it, gradually decouples the link between the trigger and the behavior. It's like studying a magic trick until you figure out the gimmick. Once you see how it works, it no longer has any power over you. With practice, you start to see your urges for what they really are: temporary bodily sensations, not commands. And you realize that a craving is just a craving, not an emergency. The more you observe it mindfully, the more boring and less compelling it becomes. The 1-minute habit breaker. So how can you put these insights into practice to break your own bad habits? Dr. Brewer suggests a remarkably simple technique he calls the 1-minute habit breaker. The next time you feel the urge to engage in a habitual behavior you want to change, whether it's reaching for a cigarette or a smartphone, just follow these 4 steps. 1. Pause and relax into the feeling of the urge, even if it's uncomfortable. Don't try to fight it or make it go away. 2. Notice what the urge actually feels like in your body. Observe it with curiosity, like a scientist. Where do you feel it most strongly? 3. Stay with the sensation for a minute or so, just observing it in your body. Notice any thoughts that arise, but don't get caught up in them. Keep your attention on the physical feelings. 4. After a minute, check in with yourself. How strong is the urge now? Is it as intense, or has it started to subside on its own? That's it. By repeating this simple practice each time you feel a craving, you'll start to reprogram your brain's reward learning system. You'll teach it that it doesn't actually need that cigarette or cookie or Instagram like to feel okay. The urge will pass on its own if you just let it be, without fighting it or giving in. Like any skill, urge surfing takes practice. Dr. Brewer suggests setting a reminder on your phone to do it at least once a day, even if you're not feeling a strong craving. The more you practice observing your urges with mindful curiosity, the more you'll train your brain to respond to them differently. Over time, you'll find that the reward value of the old habit starts to fade. Mindfulness helps you clearly see the difference between the brief hit of excitement you get from indulging a craving and the deeper satisfaction that comes from living with more freedom and choice. You realize you've been looking for happiness in some pretty misguided places. How I surfed my urge to check my phone. I can share an example of how I used this technique myself to break a habit that was really bothering me: my addiction to constantly checking my smartphone. Even though I knew intellectually that it was a pointless compulsion, I found myself reaching for my phone dozens of times a day when I was bored, anxious, or just wanting a quick hit of stimulation. Each time, I'd get sucked into a rabbit hole of emails, news headlines, and social media updates that left me feeling more restless than before. So I decided to try Brewer's 1-minute trick. The next time I felt that familiar urge to grab my phone, I just paused and observed the feeling in my body. At first, it was really uncomfortable, a kind of tightness in my chest and buzzing energy in my limbs. My thumb was twitching with the urge to scroll, but I just kept breathing and noticing the sensations with interest. Within about a minute, I was surprised to find that the urge had passed. I no longer felt that I needed to check my phone. I could just get back to what I was doing. The more I practiced this, the more I realized that my phone habit was an attempt to get away from unpleasant feelings, a misguided search for happiness and connection. Observing the urge mindfully helped me reconnect with what I really wanted: to be more present, focused, and engaged with my actual life. While I can't say I'm 100% cured of my digital compulsions, this simple practice has made a big difference. The urges still come, but they don't have the same hold on me. More often than not, I'm able to just notice them and let them pass, like clouds in the sky. And that feels way better than any Facebook like. So give it a try yourself. The next time you feel the pull of an unwanted habit, just pause, observe, and surf that urge for a minute. Notice what it's really offering you, beneath the temporary buzz. With practice, you may find a deeper satisfaction in living life on your own terms, not the terms dictated by a craving mind.